Welcome and good evening on a most fun Monday night. Generation movie knee deep in Bond-A-THON. My name is J.W. Colwell. I am joined as always by my good friend 003.5, Rich Drees. How you doing tonight, Rich?
I'm doing good. We're like 4/5 of the way through this year's Bond-A-THON, but I just had the thought that maybe we should have named it something slightly different, like Return of Bond-A-THON or something like that, to differentiate from the previous one.
But I thought Bond-A-THON 2024 is fine, right?
That'll work. That'll work.
Call it Bond-A-THon 2024. If you just son of Bond-A-THon, you know what I mean?
Return of Bond-A-THon.
The terror of Bond-A-THon.
Bond returns.
Next year we're gonna have different. Yeah, Return of Bond-A-THon works because James Bond always does return. It should be a good night. I'm not gonna lie, this one's a weird one, and we'll get into it. But this one's like one of the ones where you're just like, some things you really like, and some things you just really despise. Like it's a weird. It's just like why are we? And I'm not gonna blame it all on Denise Richards, although you can if you so choose. But in a movie where we have one of the best three-dimensional Bond girls of all time, we also have Dr. Christmas Jones. So it's like, and I just think it's something interesting. News of the weekend. The only thing I've really celebrated this week is this, Rich. 4/26, Alien Day. Do you know how? Now I'm sure you know. I don't know that everybody knows, but I'm sure you know the reason why we celebrate Alien Day on April 26th.
Planet LV-426.
That's exactly right. That's where all the eggs are. LV-426. Also, Chiron is the actual name that it gets once it has settlers. But that's what we find out in Aliens, is that LV-426 is been settled, and then not settled, and then resettled by aliens. So, but I went to see it this week, 45th anniversary.
How did it look? Was it the director's cut?
It's not the director's cut, so it is. Okay. But it does. Now, here's where I was there early watching trailers. Of course, the Romulus trailer played before it, and you're like, okay, and because I actually think the Romulus trailer looks good, and also Romulus. While I've enjoyed Covenant and Prometheus, Romulus is a different animal in the sense that, and I don't know if we've talked about this on the show, but I've talked about my Alien friends who are Alien fans. It is a chance to reinvigorate the timeline, right? Because this is an Alien movie and that's what you're starting to see is all these Alien books. Like I have a good friend from the University of Scranton, Brendan Deneen, who has Alien Uncivil War coming out in July. So he has a book coming out. Oh yeah, it's super cool. He's also written Green Arrow, and he's written a couple other books that are You know, he's written a couple of he wrote some children's books, and he's also written one Guardians of the Galaxy book. So he's amazing.
What's his name?
Brendan Deneen. He is super cool, and I enjoy him immensely. Uncivil War comes out in July. But what I think is interesting is with this Romulus movie, they have a chance to reset the timeline because, and I don't know, it takes place in between Alien, the original, and Aliens because of the 57-year layoff of Ripley drifting through the space quadrants, right? And I think the idea that if they, you know, this might be the only way to invigorate the franchise because you're going to have, because I'm going to be honest, Alien 3 is a bummer to me. It's always been a bummer. It like, I know it's a great, like, it's well done and it looks good and it's super cool, but to me, it's a fucking bummer. And I just can't get over that. And then Alien Resurrection has some cool moments, but again, it's kind of a fucking bummer. Like, like, so I would like an Alien movie to succeed and be good. I think it's one of my favorite franchises. You know, we've had terrible Alien versus Predator movies. We've had, you know, those are just awful. Like, they are just abysmal.
They're trash. They really are.
Absolute garbage. So I go and I'm watching Alien and it's on the big screen and it's a packed house. It was opening day on Friday, so 4/26 day. And it was packed. There was like 70 people in the theater. I was like, wow, that's impressive. Kind of interesting because it, like, there was also, I sent you a mail, a news article that last week Spider-Man beat Civil War at the box office for the day. Like, the one day Spider-Man 2 was out, it beat whatever the new movies were for the day. Right? It made it like $800,000. I'm excited. I like the opportunity to see original movies on the big screen. This one came with a giant conversation between Fede Alvarez and Ridley Scott.
Oh, cool.
So there was like a 15-minute full conversation. Basically, Fede Alvarez, you know, kind of going, "I love you. I can't believe getting to make an Alien movie." Kind of.
I interviewed him back when his Evil Dead film was coming out way back in the day.
He's very talented. He's made some great little movies. Nice. And super nice guy. And he's talking to Ridley Scott. And Ridley Scott, you know, is going over all the different things. And like midway through, he gives away two of the tricks that I had heard about, but didn't like. You know, you hear about tricks and like, you know, wives' tales or like, you know, just stuff that's kind of out there and your urban legend, and you're like, oh, whatever. But Ridley Scott confirmed some of them. So, like, one of them was that he hated the models. He hated the models of the engineers' ships, right? He hated them. And so his way around filming them, because he thought they looked shitty, was hooking up a monitor to the Ash station, right? So Ash is watching the monitor. And he ran a feed of the picture that he was taking into that monitor. So it gets the whole glossed over with a monitor look to it, and it looks demonic, right? And he goes, and it looks so much better on the monitor than it did in real life. And once I put it on the monitor, it just cooked. And then the other one that was kind of great is that there's a sequence where the three people that are out there are climbing, you know, Lambert and Dallas and God, he just went up on John Hurt's name in the movie. Lambert and Dallas and the other person. And they're climbing up to get into the ship hole thing. And he's like, you know, we had to do everything for scale. And when they got there, the actors looked too big. So I put my kids in the suits. And so it's one of the greatest urban legends of all time. But he confirms it. Those are my kids climbing up, trying to get into the alien ship.
And I don't think it was an urban legend. I think everybody just knew it no matter what. I mean, that's been long talked about and long confirmed by a number of people who worked on that show.
Well, but it was made. I mean, it was made like Fede Alvarez was making it like it was a big part of the talk. You know, like, is it true that you did this?
It's a great trick.
It's fantastic.
And when you look at, you know, like behind the scenes on Lord of the Rings, they do that kind of forced perspective stuff all the time. We talked about forced perspective last week with that helicopter hatch
Yes,
at
and
the
places
Mexican
too. Yeah,
location.
yeah. But it's very few directors use it properly. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I think the interesting thing here is the movie holds up remarkably well. Um, it's an amazing. It looks fantastic on the big screen. Playing the rest of the week if you get a chance. Everybody should take it in because again, like we don't get to celebrate great movies 45 years after the fact. And
Mhm.
it looked fantastic. It looked really good.
And it's only in for 1 week because next weekend we get the Star Wars Phantom Menace re-release on, to celebrate, well, not just May 4th, but for the whole week.
5 years.
Um, and then I think Fandango is also doing Steel Magnolias, which is
Yeah,
35 years.
yeah. There's a bunch of and I think we're gonna see it more and more where when they pick out movies that are cultural touchstone movies that
Mm-hmm.
people want to go see and want to see with their friends and want to see on a big screen just because you never know what's gonna happen, right? And so I went, had a
And, and,
blast. Go ahead.
and, and guys, if you drag your girlfriend to go see Star Wars or Alien,
Take him to see
Turnabout's
Steel
fair play.
Magnolias. Yes,
Take her to see Steel Magnolias also.
yes, and like I said, it's going to be a good summer for some movies coming back, and we're actually after Bond-A-THON ends, 2024 ends, we are going to launch into a summer. I think that we're going to be celebrating movies that are celebrating their anniversaries. That's what the talk is. What we're going to work on, and it's going to be movies from either 84, 94, 2004, 2014 for until we get to the when we start doing like
74.
fun stuff. 74 as well. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
50 years is a good one. Let's get some comments. Good evening, friends. Good evening, Ken McKernan. Thank you so much. And also, Ken,
Again,
I want to thank you so much for taking the admin of Loud and Nerdy and running with it and doing a bang up job, keeping bad people out. I appreciate you. Let's see. Raven says Jar Jar. Yep, Jar Jar's back. I don't hate Jar Jar anymore. I used to. I just can't. Armadillo cake. Awesome. Laugh out loud. Yes. It's blood red. 1984 Streets of Fire. Maybe.
ooh, that's one I have to say I've never seen. I need, yeah, and it's always been on
Wow.
my list to circle back to. And
Wow.
um,
Michael Pere or Pere?
Michael Priade, yeah. Which, oh wait, no, Michael Priade was the
Michael
star
Pere.
of
It's Pare.
Michael Priade was the star of Robin of Sherwood on ITV in England, which
Yes.
just celebrated its 40th anniversary like yesterday or 2 days ago.
Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. Thank you.
And
I do appreciate it, Ken.
And if you're a Robin Hood fan, definitely track that show down. It's amazing.
What else? I want the Sith fan theory to be true. Laugh out loud. No, he can't be a Sith. He's too Siths. He can't be a Sith. I know. He just can't be a Sith. Um, other big news of the week. I mean, Challengers did very well. We have a new boss at Paramount Global. That movie that
Mm-hmm.
looks like we're prepping for a sale. Is what I put through with
Yeah,
that.
I'm personally hoping it goes to
Skydance.
Skydance,
Yeah,
who's
Skydance.
basically been like the money behind a lot of big Paramount productions, anyways.
Yeah,
That makes more sense.
I think
Sony
Skydance would be
already
nice and safe.
Yeah, Sony already owns a studio. I don't want them owning a second studio.
Yeah, they're
Um,
not doing great with the studios they own.
well,
You know
well,
what I mean?
I just
Like,
don't want the collapse of the number of studios to continue because okay, take a look. Before Disney bought 20th Century Fox, they were putting out what, 12 to 15 movies, 20 movies a year. And now what have they put out?
yeah. Well, the interesting thing there is, can I tell you?
Deadpool and Avatar movies.
Funny thing about that.
And Alien coming up. But
when the original 20th Century Fox logo started playing, people were clapping
mm-hmm,
because 20th
because it's
Century
awesome.
Fox 20th Century Fox was a quality studio. They made good movies and they made them all the time. Like, so anyway, Streets of Fire, great soundtrack. It is, yes.
Mhm.
Amazingly evil, haha. I don't think it is. But but Bond-A-THON, the interesting thing about tonight's Bond-A-THON movie, we are we are shifting. It's an interesting thing when we get to the third movies.
The
Bond's
end is nigh in a way.
in a way it's the beginning of the end, but also this Bond has had a couple movies. He's working, and this one is interesting because Tomorrow Never Dies was not great, and Die Another Day is not great. So Brosnan is a pretty game Bond that kind of like when you look at Daniel Craig, right? Daniel Craig got like, except for one or two, he had three banger Bonds, right?
Hmm.
And one that was okay, and then one that was just, what the fuck happened here? Like, this is a mess, right? But usually, the third Bond is where you know what a Bond is. Like, a Bond can get his, he kind of sows his Bondian oats and understands what kind of Bond he is. And this one is an interesting, like, I was looking at different things, right? It's 1999. It's about to be Y2K, right? So we have, I also think the interesting shift where everything goes from governments and kind of espionage to almost all the bad guys in Bond films these days are billionaires. They're all super wealthy people who have, and I guess it's kind of like, Doctor No didn't seem too rich. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of like, it's an interesting kind of take where the only people that have the money to pull off shit in a Bond movie is billionaires, people with
Well,
loads of cash and
I'm
time.
going to hypothesize. I'm going to hypothesize here for a moment about this, and I'm wondering if, because overall theatrical distribution is becoming more global, um, expanse, more global marketplace, and Bond is known around the world. So if you're looking to make sure you can get your film into a theater in Russia or in China, where there may be some stricter controls about product coming in from outside of the country, and you kind of depend on being in those markets to,
Espionage not a great thing.
nut that on your budget and everything. Maybe don't antagonize them by making them the bad guys.
Yeah, but
But
antagonizing them is an interesting thing because, like, Maverick, they made them change a jacket. They made them change a patch on the jacket. They were so furious, and
the
they
Red
did,
Dawn,
and that's an interesting. I understand what you're saying. I think the interesting thing here is it's 99, it's Y2K, so there's all kinds of weird shit going on, and you know, let's start. Let's get to it.
let's
Let's
dig
dive
in.
in. Let's dig in. The production. Okay. When you look up and you're watching this movie, the first thing you realize, it's written by like five people. The screenplay's by three different people. The story's by two different people, who also happen to be writing with other rewrites all over the place. And so it's kind of like, the story behind this one seems to be murky. Everything's murky. Like they can't, like they get the idea from it from the Broccolis watching Nightline about the fight over oil in the Caspian Sea, which seems to be a real thing that happened, where she's like, that would make a great movie, write the script, go. And it's just like, it becomes like this thing where I was watching, it's like one of the first Bond movies that I can ever remember where everything is, the rule, you and I have rules, or I don't know if you have them, but I have them, where if a screenplay says, written by blank and it's one person, it's usually pretty good because it's one person's vision. If it's written by blank and blank, again, maybe it's two people who have the same vision. But if it's written by blank and then there's an ampersand and somebody else, that's three people putting their mitts on a script. And this is one of the stories behind this one. It just seems, that even at some point you had You had actresses working on it. You had, people who were friends with the director working on it. So it's like it becomes this weird thing, and then fighting over who's going to direct, right?
Well, Purvis and Wade, this is their first Bond movie, yeah, and they did the early drafts. They hammered out the story and everything. That's why they get the story credit as well. They, for the crap they get for this and the real crap they get for Die Another Day, they did stay through the entire
Craig. Yeah, they've written every Bond film since
the first drafts there. So
since this one, yes, it's an amazing.
They're supplying the basic architecture for these Bond films, and they obviously had to have been very involved in the redefinition of the franchise when Craig was coming in. I think it's interesting that that they did stick around, because I would have thought any producer worth their salt would have seen the outcome of Die Another Day and said, well, guys, we're gonna you guys have go and have a nice day.
I think that's true. I also think it's interesting is that we were like, a lot of the criticism of this one is that it's very much a leopard not being able to change its spots, right? Mm-hmm. And so like, they had people passing at the script that was like, Michael Apted's wife, Dana Stevens, got an uncredited rewrite where she streamlined the feminine roles because she'd been working on Michael Apted movies for a long time. You know what I mean? And so Michael Apted comes on, and it's his first time directing a Bond film, and they get him because he's made these great women movies, right? Coal Miner's Daughter, Gorillas in the Mist, Nell, a bunch of other movies. He's a really good director with regards to females. And many thought when he came aboard that we're going to get some great Bond women, right? Bond girls. And it turns out we do. And we don't. Like, and so it's like, it's just this weird thing. Even one of my other favorite stories, Donald Westlake, the crime novelist, also had a run, right? Where, basically he had set the script in China, and they were like, no, we're good, right? We don't need that. And so it's like, it's an interesting kind of like thing that all these people take the pass on it, and the pieces that work, Rich, really work, and the pieces that don't work don't. And it's this weird Bond movie where you enjoy yourself. It's a 2-hour and 8-minute movie, at the time the longest Bond, right? You enjoy probably an hour and 40 minutes, and then there's about 38 minutes where you're just like pulling your fucking hair out, going, this makes no sense. Why are we doing this? And I think, the filming takes place. It's a quick shoot. It goes January 99 until June of that year, right? Of course, they shoot at Pinewood Studios, which now gets the Albert R. Broccoli 007 stage. They film in Spain. They film, all over London, including 3 weeks on the Thames. So.
And I think here's where I want to kind of jump in and call out our good buddy Vic Armstrong, world's greatest stuntman. Great autobiography, by the way. Who was the second unit director, basically in charge of shooting all the action stuff. And
it looks great.
I didn't have the chance to read the full chapter on this movie, but he does talk how they had up to, basically his remit was like Bond chases the bad gal on the boat on the Thames, and the chase has to end at the Millennium Dome, and there needs to be a hot air balloon involved somehow. That was what they were told.
Yeah, and, well, that's what I mean. Like some of the stories you hear is just crazy. It's crazy. Like we're gonna do a snowmobile chase in skis, but but it's but it's way more intricate than it is. You know what I mean? And it actually has one of the great Bond moments that, where you're like, he tricks one guy to fly over the cliff, and then the guy puts up his parachute and he survives. And Bond
Mm-hmm.
looks at him like, "Fuck, god damn it, I was counting on that." Um, and
The
I think
sequence
that's
starts the ski sequence starts off with something that made me laugh, where she turns to Bond and goes, you know how to ski, don't you? And I'm sitting there thinking, only in every third movie, sweetheart, because by this point, this is the 19th Bond movie, and this is the 6th
yeah, he
downhill
likes to
ski
ski. He likes
sequence
to
we've had.
ski.
Literally,
He
look
might
it
be
up.
good at skiing. Also, how many people he kills while skiing is also like
Mm-hmm.
he has a bigger death count than Jason on the slopes. He kills more people on the slopes than anybody.
Yeah, but he's licensed and Jason isn't. So
Jason's isn't licensed. He's just a sad child that was murdered uh, by incompetence. So they do a lot of filming on the Thames. They do they look all over the place. They film at some castles, which is nice. They shoot one of the sequences in Chamonix, France. Um, Although they had a couple of days delay because of an avalanche where they ended up using all of their equipment and people to rescue people in the avalanche, which is kind of cool. Bond doing Bond things.
mm-hmm.
The movie takes place all over the world, and I do think that one of the things that comes across in Brosnan's Bond is that it is a worldwide occupation, right? This movie is in Azerbaijan, which was a hotspot right around the turn of the century. Spain, which is always great for Bond. It also has the longest opening credit sequence, pre-credit sequence. It goes almost 20 minutes, Rich.
Mm-hmm.
20 minutes, and then it has the weirdest fucking. It has two things. Like, I don't remember the garbage song, and I heard it again today, and I was like, okay. And then all you see is people covered in oil and derricks. So it's like this weird, like, and I realize watching a lot of Bond films that you're gonna get weird title sequences. But I don't like, for whatever reason, the Craig title sequences seem to work so much better than any of like the older sequences are just dated booby oil. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's
It,
weird. Just how dated they look now.
we talked about how License to Kill was the last title credit sequence by the great oh crap, Maurice Binder,
I
the
think
guy
it's
who
better
he'd been doing it, for decades at
for a
that
long
point,
time.
and of course he gets his own credit, in the opening credits. Whoever did this one goes unnamed in the opening credits, which I
Yeah,
think,
unnamed. It's some underling at the Broccoli Studio. This one
yeah.
also has, like, music wise, we have Garbage doing the main theme.
Mm-hmm.
Although they were like they were in, like, this was a competition. They had two theme songs, but The World Is Not Enough. And Garbage's theme song won. And they put work into it. I was listening to it today. References to Goldfinger, references to all these other Bond movies, Live and Let Die, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Super cool, well done, and it is one of the first movies where David Arnold is the composer, and he does a great job with the music of the film. Although he got no big fight with the Broccolis near the end because he put in another song, and then they basically cut that song out, and basically Michael Apted said, no, I want the Bond theme, playing the entire time. Which is interesting because that, very rarely do you fight with, like, your music supervisor over placement. The idea that this is going to be
Mm-hmm.
the Bond movie before the millennium, and we need the Bond theme playing loudly as people exit the theater. You know what I mean? Pretty cool. They like I was looking at that as like kind of an interesting kind of like um story. Also, this is the last Bond movie that will use the BMW. We will get back to other different cars after, they made a deal when they started with Brosnan. Brosnan started with the BMW with GoldenEye and Tomorrow Never Dies, and this is the last one. It's the BMW Z28. It was a basically it wasn't even manufactured yet before it appeared in this
Hmm.
Bond movie, so they had to provide test cars. That's why it's only in one sequence and it's barely moving. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's crazy
Um,
shit.
I do have a note that I kind of jotted down at that point, but I think it kind of umbrellas across the movie. We have our traditional scene with Q, where he and 007 kind of trade quips back and forth, and we saw the jacket with the big giant
Oh, yeah,
inflatable,
yeah.
you know, survival ball thing. But we don't see Q demonstrating any other gadgets besides that when he, gives stuff to Bond. We don't see him, with the watch or all the different things in
He's
the
playing with
car.
his
None
boat.
of
He's playing with the boat at the beginning.
Mhm.
That's the only
But
real thing. Like, and the boat gets fucked up beyond belief after the
yeah,
the
but
Thames
but
flood.
I liked that because we know that Bond probably has some gadgets, but I feel like
He gets
when
he gets
Q
one thing upgraded. He gets the
when Q
glasses get
goes,
upgraded.
here's what you have to use. We kind of know how Bond is going to get out of certain situations. Well, obviously he's going to use the laser in his shoe because we know he has a laser in his shoe. And
Well, this one,
here,
the watch is super cool.
on
Actually,
that,
the watch is like a Batman grappling hook. It
yeah.
worked out really
Here,
well. Like, I kind of like
but
that
we
they
don't know.
didn't do that
We didn't know it was there until he actually has to use it.
until he
And
actually
then
does it.
there's a lot of like fun surprises going, oh, that's how he, oh, the car has missiles. Cool. As opposed to sitting there going, so when's he going to fire the missiles from the car?
Yes, not
It that
knowing.
a little
Yes,
something.
not knowing what it has, but
And
it's
I'd
going to
like
be
to see the,
something cool. They should do that more often, right?
yes, exactly. I'd like to
They
see the
should
franchise
definitely
do
do
that.
that more often. This is also, we do have to bring this up. This is also the last movie for Desmond Llewellyn, right? He has played Q forever. He dies tragically in a car accident after
Mhm.
filming ends.
Yeah, he
Um,
was not planning on retiring. They were just
no,
slowly introducing this new character to kind
yeah,
of,
R. John Cleese is
you know,
R.
to kind of
Um,
give a
but
different dynamic in the
yeah,
armor sequences.
but
Um,
Llewellyn passes away in a car accident. Um, and it's just I'm not gonna say he's not missed in the Craig Bonds because I would love to see Craig playing off of him. Also, it's kind of warm in this one when like it's just like Q's very usually he's fighting with 007 because 007's broken shit and nothing
mhm.
comes back the way it goes out, And but this one, it's like when he's introducing him to John Cleese, he's like, "It's 007. This is 007. This is the one we make all this shit for." Like,
Mhm.
and it's just very warm. And I
Well,
knowing
I
the
mean,
history, I was tickled by it. I
he's a
knowing
little
that
paternal in License to Kill, I think.
yes,
Um,
he is. He shows up and he's,
and,
but that's
and
like that's the
maybe
beginning of
more
it.
so to the Bond girl, who a week later I've already forgotten her name. Uh,
Carrie
but
Lowell.
yeah,
Anyway, I know the actresses. But yeah, I
so
mean, it's nice. This
and
movie also like casting wise, ridiculous casting stories. Sophie Marceau, stars as Elektra King. She's a kidnapped victim. The people that were in like up for it, a young Vera Farmiga and Sharon Stone at one point auditioned. I like that just seems wild. And then Denise Richards is the other Bond girl, and she was cast basically because I was thinking about this today. Why was Denise Richards cast? And if you look at your IMDb, you go, what movie came out in 1998? Rich, do you know what I'm going for here?
No, I'm sorry.
1998, this little movie called Wild Things opens,
Oh, duh, yeah.
and it's a big hit, and it's steamy, and that's how we get Denise Richards as Bond girl, Doctor Christmas Jones. Fucking kill me now. Um, let's see comments. You both have on cool T-shirts. Let's see them. Okay, mine's just the classic Revenge of the Jedi.
Mine
The
is
Saga continues.
last
Tribeca
year's
film.
Tribeca Film Festival T-shirt.
Mine's Revenge of the Jedi, the original title of Return of the Jedi. But we got cold feet because Jedi's can't do revenge or have any fun. John Cleese's amazing Bond girls rolls eyes. Yep, not both Bond girls. Both like that's we're gonna get to that. TNA, yes, but I would say that one is prime TNA and one is
Yeah,
esoteric
they,
and kind of a
they were
three-dimensional.
very, they were very, very careful to make sure Denise winds up in a wet T-shirt at one point.
At some point. Also, she wears the weirdest things, like she's wearing shorts at a nuclear facility. But anyway, I don't want to get to that.
I almost can forgive that because she has the other suit on, which is probably hot and heavy inside.
We also need to talk a little bit about Robert Carlyle, his Renard character. And the funny thing here is the people that are offered the Renard role, Jean Reno is coming off The Professional around this time, and Javier Bardem, which is interesting because next week we'll see Javier Bardem in this one. And I can't say, I look at it and I go, wow, Javier Bardem made a great choice. Good for him. These are the specs, by the way, that he wears, which is a hilarious scene. Dr. Christmas Jones, ladies and gentlemen. Elektra King, Sophie Marceau. Also Sophie Marceau torturing Bond. Nice. And then Renard. We get a little bit of Renard, but he's one of those Bond villains. We also get Zukowski, played by Robbie Coltrane, who is returning from GoldenEye, which is a nice touch.
Yes. I was sad to see his character go, but grateful that he doesn't have to show up and die another day, I guess.
Well, I also feel like that character could be like a Russian Felix Leiter.
Yeah.
So it's kind of Brosnan's Leiter.
It's the way General Gogol would show up every now and then too.
Yeah,
I like where we have recurring characters that maybe aren't in every movie, but
it's a nice
keep every now and then.
Right, it keeps things frothy. Also,
it's a good
it also begs the question, like, what are some of these people that come into contact with Bond? Do they just go back to their lives? You know what I mean? Like, because Bond has this incredible contact, but good.
There's one character I didn't want to see again, and we wound up seeing again, and I think you could probably guess who it is.
Go ahead.
That freaking Southern sheriff that Bond encounters in was it Live and Let Die?
I think it's Live and Let Die, and I think it's the Man with the Golden Gun.
Yeah, Man with the Golden Gun. That's just a terrible character, and I don't know why people thought he should come back.
Well, he was, because I think it was right around the time. Think about it; it's right around the time that Smokey and the Bandit was hot.
It's true.
You know what I mean? So I can see things. You know what else we see with this as we leave production, which is again not a lot of fighting. This is less fighting than License to Kill because there wasn't as much panic because Brosnan's Bond's movies were doing well. Speaking of doing well, how well does a Pierce Brosnan Bond do? Well, that's interesting. You say it grosses $126 million domestically. Adjusted 268, which would put it in the likes of now, like something like Dune 2. Major hits where that you can base a franchise on. It ends up grossing $361 worldwide. So 126 domestically, 234 internationally, and we're talking about major numbers. Like it has an opening weekend of 35 million. It lasts about 4 weeks only, and it only gets kind of crushed because it ends up going against Toy Story 2 on Thanksgiving weekend. So it's number one November 19th, and then the following week Toy Story 2 opens, and Bond gets crushed by Andy's Playthings. But it ends up doing very well. 126 is nothing to sneeze at domestically in 99. It opens on 3,100 theaters and lasts about eight and a half weeks. Now here's where it gets interesting. As we were talking about earlier Bonds, the budget on the Brosnan Bonds goes apeshit. They become mega budgeted films, and the budget on this one is $135 million.
And that's 1998 money.
Yeah, and it only grosses 2.7 times its production budget. So we're at this point where Bond is making lots of money, but the receipts domestically don't even cover the budget. And that's an interesting thing as a franchise progresses, because a franchise, we're the 19th movie here, right? It becomes this thing where the diminishing returns, but also the idea that you need to refreshen it. Bond has the built-in refresher of we'll get a new Bond, their Bonds will be different kind of thing. But Brosnan was enjoying a pretty cool run. GoldenEye was a huge hit, brought Bond back from the brink after License to Kill, after they had a pretty dry run in the early 90s. He becomes the Bond of before the Millennium changes. And his Bond isn't it's kind of like a mixture. His Bond is bad Roger Moore jokes delivered more sardonically, and a little bit of the kind of the athleticism that goes along with Connery's Bond, right?
Yeah. Just taking a look at at an inflation adjuster calculator.
Yeah.
$135 million in 1998 is about $258 million today.
Yeah, well, that's what the interesting thing here is.
That's a crazy amount of money to be spent.
That is a crazy amount of money, but also it becomes part of the franchise build, right? We're not making small entertainment here. This is a franchise that is, everything is bigger, faster, stronger, right? It has to be. It's like the Bionic Woman or the $6 Million Man. Bigger, faster, stronger. It's got to be bigger, faster, stronger. And the box office here is interesting. 126 at the time was the highest a Bond movie has ever grossed in domestically. Like they grossed bank around the world because he's a knowable commodity, right? And Brosnan Bond at this time, he's making BMW ads. This particular incarnation of Bond with Brosnan and was fairly successful.
But looking at the box office, $135 million budget, you need to make 2.5 times that to clear. You're looking at $337 million, and this movie only made $361 at the box office, so it didn't even clear $30 million profit. Which, yay, it's something at least, but it could have been a lot more because I don't see that amount of money on the screen.
No, I think the action sequences are impressive.
Oh yes,
and I also think the interesting thing of Brosnan's Bond, and we talked about it a little bit with Roger Moore's Bond, right? Roger Moore's Bond is running into a place and then he waits for a bunch of people to show up and he finishes the job. Brosnan's Bond is always knee deep in whatever's happened, right? And he's usually by himself. I would say, think about the sheer volume of money with regard to the submarine. Anytime you have submarine shit, ask the producers of Mission Impossible how much one submarine component on any screenplay costs. And this one has a submarine component plus a submarine escape plus days of shooting on a submarine set that's inverted. So I can see the money. I don't know that you get. I would say like you see the money, but you don't necessarily see the bang for your buck, right? It doesn't look like a $250 million movie should look. Doesn't look like an Avatar or a Titanic or any of these other movies. But I think the box office is interesting again because the main component for me is it's the first one that grosses well over 100 million at the U.S. box office, and we are the second biggest fan base for 007 in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
oh yeah,
it's kind of like this, it's a win, but it's also like this is as we get to it, critical response then and now. This is where the wheels are turning. Hey, we need a refurbishment. We need a complete overhaul of how we do this particular franchise. This movie, we always look at Rotten Tomatoes as more of a guideline, just to give you a heads up. 148 reviews. It's a 51%, so that's a negative. That's a rotten. It has a 49% audience score with over 100,000 rankings. So this one go like, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I saw a couple of the critics and things where this is on a 10. This is on like in the top 3 worst Bonds, and I
wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, well, I saw a bunch of them. I swear to God, I saw View to a Kill, this, and Moonraker are the 3 that were on a list I saw earlier today, and I was just like, I was losing my mind because I'm like, it's not great, right? It's not Goldfinger or Dr. No or From Russia with Love or Goldeneye or Skyfall or Casino Royale, right? It's not that good, but it's not bad. It's a good Bond film. But it gets a lot of hate, and when you're looking at the critics' responses, the number one cause of hate, Rich Drees, is what? What are the 2 words that the critics hate the most?
Fan service.
Denise Richards.
Well, Denise Richards. Okay.
Yeah, and I it's a little bit cruel. It gets the bashing of Denise Richards becomes like a full contact sport on this movie. And it, I think the main problem for me with her is that she's thrown into the movie real late in the game, right? It's real late when she shows up, like an hour and 20 minutes in. And the other main problem is she's in a Bond film with a Bond girl that is written way better than most of the Bond girls are. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Sophie Marceau's Elektra King is a Bond girl for the ages. She's like, when you're watching her, it's a really good performance. She's really good.
Yeah.
And I think that the one joke I read was, and the script writers are talking about it, he wants Tracy, but he gets Blofeld. Mm-hmm. Right? He wants Tracy Bond, but in reality, what he's sleeping with, when he beds Elektra King is he's sleeping with the next Blofeld.
Yes,
and
I mean, they're so concentrated on doing something interesting with Sophie Marceau's character that there's no Christmas Jones character. She's not a character at all. She's a plot device. She exists to, push a button while Bond is swimming around outside the sub. She exists to maybe try to turn something off. She exists to help him in the pipeline sequence. She exists to sit there and constantly reiterate, we're running out of time, and to continue to emphasize the stakes involved.
Who are you? She consistently says, who are you? Yes. And it was like, I had Kate Capshaw.
That should be the question she's asking herself, because I don't know what this character is. They say she's a nuclear physicist.
I had
and I'm not saying that
Rich.
because she's a beautiful woman. Beautiful women can be nuclear physicists. I'm saying it because every other thing she does in this movie, she's really, really dumb.
I
And
had
so I'm like,
I had Kate Capshaw, Willie visions with this, and
I want to say
you
Willie
know,
Tyler, but that's Willie Tyler and Lester, the
yeah,
ventriloquist act.
no. I think okay. So I was looking at it, right? Action sequences are pretty good. The worldwide, the plot is actually pretty good. The villain plot, because we've kind of made up our rules with regards to Bond films, what works and what doesn't. The car's the car's cool, but it also doesn't work. So some of the gadgets in this movie are super cool, but they're only on screen for a couple minutes. There's a sequence where he's walking through a casino and he has like X-ray specs on, but the X-ray specs only see underneath the first garment because it's a PG-13. So instead of seeing all the stuff we would see, we see a lot of people with guns because it's a Russian mobster casino. Um, so that the tech isn't spectacular. I mean, the ball is pretty cool. The avalanche ball that he gets into after, and the Bond
But
girls
I'm
this
happy.
Bond girl is great. I think she's well written. I think that most of it, you're right. I think most of the intrinsic qualities of the script were made to make her so good. And then the other one that shows up is just a piece of ass. She
True.
is just she's in short shorts, running around in Azerbaijan with Russian soldiers. You know what I mean? Like she's the only American in with a bunch of Russian soldiers, and they're like, "Don't even hit on her because she's not worth it." Right? And I'm thinking to myself,
One other thing too. I do like that. I was thinking about Judi Dench's M here, and
yes,
how I think she, is definitely portraying this character differently than we'll see during the Craig years. The Craig years, she's, the character has a much harder edge, does not take anybody's shit. Here, she feels a little softer. She's willing to go out to into the word, winds up getting her kidnapped. She has
it's a
a
tale of
moment
two M's. It's a
she
tale of
has
two
a
M's.
moment where she sees Bond having to kill somebody. And I think it kind of brings home to her exactly what her agents have to go through. And I get the feeling she's never really had to confront that reality.
He has a great.
That
there's a great
she
moment.
understands it kind of like oh, well, I know they go out and they kill people, but she's never actually been there when it's happened.
And also known the person that gets killed. Also, I will say it does have one of my favorite Bond moments. Brosnan delivers it great too. There's a moment where he catches Renard, and he's basically, "I'm gonna fucking kill you. I'm like, I don't like you. I don't like what you've done to this girl that I like, and I usually feel bad about killing unarmed people, but you, I don't give a fuck. I don't care." Right? And it's this great moment with Bond where he's, and it's at that moment that they throw in the script that basically, he's been duped a little bit more than he's ever been in any Bond film, right? I mean, this dupe runs deep for Bond.
It cuts deep, yeah.
It cuts real deep because he says the exact same line that Sophie Marceau's Elektra King is fed to him in bed.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me ask you a question about Elektra too that I was thinking about.
Sure.
Why does she refer to M as M? All she should know is this old lady is friends with my dad from college. So wouldn't somewhere along the way she would have learned the name?
No, I get the idea that
Auntie Clara or whatever.
The code name. Yeah, I get the idea that with M, this is the second movie where M is having a drink with somebody, right? Not Judi Dench's M, but another M. Like we've had two movies in a row on Bond-A-THON 2024 where the M's are actually social people, right? So I think
it felt weird to have Elektra refer to her.
It felt weird to have it. but I think it would also feel weird if you had her calling her Judy. You know, it'd feel out of place. Also, Bond refers to her as M in front of her, so like it happens. She's called M by everybody, right?
Hmm.
Even in that sequence where they're standing there watching everything play out, and you're watching Sophie Marceau behind the scenes go, you know, as she's moving her chess pieces into place. And I think, you know, for the most part, I think that's where it comes from. I think she calls her M, you know, out of some sort of morbid respect. But I also think maybe her dad probably brought it up to her. It's an excellent question.
Yeah.
Like, why
I
do you
mean,
know the code name? Why do you know the elite code name for the head
if
of
you went to
MI6?
if you went to college with somebody who now is in charge of some secret spy organization who has a special code name within that organization, would you still call them Fred, or would you call them, oh, this is my friend
I would
X09
call
or
them. I
whatever,
would call them. Me personally, I would call them Nick. But that's just something to talk about another time when we're not on. Um, that's a true thing. But I
Oh
think,
my.
you know, yeah. So, but what I would also say is I think the action sequences work, right? I mean, for the most part, like that first time that tree cutter shows up, and you're just like thinking to yourself, when's that showing up again? Like,
Hmm.
there's a tree cutter the likes of which I have never seen. It looks like a tree's worst nightmare, and you're like,
Chekhov's tree cutter.
yeah, it's Chekhov's seven blade tree saw.
Hmm.
And you know, like, when is that going to show up? But when it does show up, it's pretty good. That's the other thing about I do like about the Brosnan Bonds a little bit is that there is athleticism and chess piece moving that he does during the action sequences that I don't think it was part of Dalton's. I don't think it was part of Connor. It definitely wasn't part of Moore's. Right? Moore's no
No.
way, shape, or form getting involved physically. A little bit of part of Connery's and really part of Craig's. But Brosnan is kind of the middle ground where he's doing Bond as, you know, he's got a lot of attitude. He's smug, you know, and he also makes really
Mhm.
bad jokes twice at the end. I don't hate this Bond. I think it's a pretty good Bond. I was looking at my favorite review was Roger Ebert, who's like, "Hey, I know everybody's hating on it, but I had a good time, and what are we really going to the movies for except to have a good time? It's got a lot of action. It you know, it's
Yeah.
got glitzy sets. It's got and the other thing that comes across in the reviews, even the bad ones, Marceau is really good. Like, and the
Hmm.
interesting thing here is she's actually more of the villain than Renard, right? I mean, in reality,
Yeah.
midway through
She's
the
all.
fight, midway through the fight with her, Bond realizes, you know, Elektra King wasn't turned into a maniac by Renard. Renard was turned into a less of a psycho by Elektra King, right? You
Mhm.
know, didn't do everything he needed to do to get the money for kidnapping her, allowed her to escape, and because she won him over, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting kind of like it's a great dynamic, and also it's very rarely do we get to see Bond duped. Very rarely do we get to see Bond injured. I thought that was a real interesting component of this
Hmm.
movie is how badly fucked up he is with the shoulder and how, you know, again, he does a completely
Yeah.
misogynistic thing with like hooking up with the doctor so he can pass.
It's the franchise, slowly reaching for a little bit more realism, and but not sure exactly where the boundary is of where they should stop. Um,
Yeah, not having no
Ultimately they're
concept.
going to burn that boundary down when they do Casino Royale and just make it all feel like a whole lot more
Right,
realistic.
and actually have Bond in a fucking recuperating in a
Yes,
fucking hospital. Like, so yeah, I think it's a real interesting place. Like,
he
this
doesn't
is
fuck
the
himself
Bond.
out of the hospital like he does here.
Yes,
Basically.
this is the Bond film where you can see it's stretching thin, and you see some course corrections. You see
Hmm.
a three-dimensional Bond girl, and then you also see a regular Bond, like a Bond girl that is shouldn't be a Bond, right? It like see a Bond girl, and then you see a Bond girl that's three-dimensional, actually the darkest character in the movie and the scariest character in the movie, because she has killed her father. She is set up
Oh
this
yeah.
plot. She's looking to take over the oil industry, and she also wants to be seen as nice. So the ultimate, like, she's the ultimate kind of like conniving, evil, vile character. I think where it kind of like, some of the dialogue's clunky. Like some of the dialogue's clunky. Some of
Mm-hmm.
like the plot machinations are a little bit like, do you believe that you can steal half plutonium ring and be able to split it on the spot and be able to, try to steal another half? And like some of it is just like, and the ridiculous sequence with the pipeline where it's like it looked like they were trying to set up a Disney ride. Like it's just like this crazy. You know what I mean?
I
Like,
kind of like that idea. I mean, it's a callback to we saw some pipeline, travel in from Russia with Love.
and we also saw
Way,
some pipeline travel in the Living Daylights, right? So
yeah, it,
so I do like that. I think the response then at like that it was it's showing its seams. It's kind of it's desperate for a 2000 makeover, right? And I think the now it's kind of like it's the second best Brosnan Bond, right? Of it just from sheer for like, Die Another Day is awful. Tomorrow Never Dies is average, even though it has a really good Bond gal. It's really funny. He's had two Bond gals that are three-dimensional, really good actresses, kind of drifting in and being able to do what they do. Like Marceau, she's the star for me in this one. She's really good. And I was thinking about it today, and tell me if you don't enjoy this legacy. Where did I put it? What did I do with that? I moved it. Okay, legacy franchise viability. Can I tell you something?
sure.
I feel like Christopher Nolan might have seen this one, and the reason I feel like Christopher Nolan might have seen this one is because it's The Dark Knight Rises. I was thinking about it. Really is, and I was thinking about it, and I'm looking
Yeah,
at it. Holy shit! Right?
yeah.
Because it's oh my god, yes, it's
Well, I mean, Nolan has been very,
adamant. Yes, that he would love to
vocal
make a
about
Bond.
wanting to do a Bond film. Although they're never going to give him the creative control he wants, so that's why he kind of did things like, I
Tenet
mean, you can see his Bond aspirations in Inception
and
and
Tenet.
in Tenet.
Well, but
Uh,
I just the legacy franchise viability. We're 19 films in. We're not stopping, right? And
yeah.
we're going forward. We will eventually, like, one of the things about the franchise viability and legacy here is this is where things are starting to churn. If you're a Bond fan, where we will get all of the changes that you so desperately want with Daniel Craig, right?
Mhm.
This is the one where the seams are showing. This is the one where we're trying to make three-dimensional female characters who can stick around with Bond. This is the one where we're trying to do like rip from the headlines kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like this is the
Yeah.
one where it's the seeds. The basically the seeds that started with Dalton, right? The Dalton License to Kill. The seeds spring up here. Like Brosnan takes his character in a whole different way, and then he starts to grind and gets to the third movie, and he is the Bond that he is, right? But
Hmm.
I was thinking about it today. I had the epiphany watching it, going, "This is fucking The Dark Knight Rises. She's Talia al Ghul, and Renard is Bane. Holy shit!" And I was also tell me it doesn't get worse when you start thinking about like Renard's background as the bad guy that can't feel pain, and then you start going, "Holy shit!" And then the big reveal at the end is that Talia is actually Talia, right? The girl that's been hanging around the whole movie, trying to be sweet on Bruce, is actually Talia al Ghul, and she's here to revenge, and her revenge is that she wants to get M. She wants M for not paying the ransom. You know, but the legacy of this movie is that for me, it's all the seeds that we were thinking about, what we wanted a Bond film to be in the aughts, and what we wanted a Bond film to be for a modern audience. The seeds are
And
planted
doesn't,
here.
and doesn't M say she, against my better judgment as a mother?
Yes.
That's something that never got developed, which I was like, oh yeah, that's right. They did mention that. That would have been interesting.
Yeah, well,
You
and
know,
that's what I'm saying. Like, the seeds for Craig's movies are planted in this movie. And
yeah.
also the criticisms of it wasn't something that could just happen. And I think that's the greatest legacy for this particular movie, is that the criticisms, the good and the bad, right? Both good and bad criticisms, they all come to pass in the Craig movies, right? They all, like, we're going to write three-dimensional characters. Bond's going to be able to be injured. He can be duped. Like, up until this movie, he's never been this duped. He gets,
Mm-hmm.
he looks like he gets shot when Renard says the line, right?
Yeah.
What is it? Don't, live for today because you don't know what tomorrow's coming, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, it's also the place, the title, "The World Is Not Enough," is, from a franchise perspective, it's the Bond coat of arms that was in on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and will again be shown in Skyfall, right? So
True.
it's
And
it,
that's a literary reference that goes all the way back to the books. So
it goes back to the books. It also goes back to, I was
yeah, it's
thinking about
nothing
it,
they
right?
made up.
It goes back to Chaucer. It goes back a long ways.
Mm-hmm.
But legacy perspective, the criticism, both good and bad, are make whatever's going to happen with Bond later on. You know what I mean? Like, it becomes important. It becomes, you know, it's a middle ground that can't sustain, and Craig will push it further into the grim serious stuff. That's why when we talk about picking a new Bond, everybody wants somebody that's like Craig, and I don't want Craig at all. I feel like trying to remake some of the Craig stuff is going to be real difficult to pull off. I would like the real world seriousness, but I would also like it. Like, I think the franchise that it needs to mimic isn't necessarily Bond films, right? I think the way the next set of Bond films has to mimic is the Mission Impossible movies. It has to kind of, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the mimicry has changed, and I don't know that if we're gonna. And for people who want a Daniel Craig Bond, I don't. Do you want brute force? Do you want it any way to hamper?
I mean, I grew up reading the original Fleming uh, as substitute for when I couldn't stay up to watch the end of the movies when they were on ABC Sunday night at the movies. So I kind of do like Thug Bond, the thuggish Bond. I don't like misogyny necessarily, but misogynistic Bond is a character that I understand is the roots of all of this. And obviously, yeah, we should have changed some things going forward. Um,
I think it's one of those interesting things
I don't
where
know if we want. I don't know if we want to return because when you say Mission Impossible Bond, to me, I think of how Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt feels very um much like a superhero. I don't see too many foibles that he has. I don't see too much failure that he generally gets. He, beats he gets out of every situation he's in because he's just the super smartest guy in the world. And again,
I
it
agree.
kind of
I agree.
takes
I just think I think
respect.
that's what they. All I'm saying is that if the idea that we're going to try to copy the Craig Bonds, I think, is not what's going to happen. I think whoever plays Bond next, they're gonna have they're gonna have to rewrite some of the pieces, and I think this movie. And when we get to Craig and his movie, like when we talk about Skyfall, we talk about No Time to Die, and all. Like, when we talk about them at some point during Bond BOND-A-THON 2025 or whatever. What I just think it's going to be an interesting thing. What happens to the next Bond, and Bond as a whole is a character. The seeds planted here, I think, lead to our Craig Bond, and I think
Oh yeah, definitely.
what happens with the Craig Bond will lead to the next Bond, and again, I hope we get the new Bond before BOND-A-THON 2024 ends. Doesn't look like we're going to, but that's
I hate to say it, I don't think so, man.
I don't think we're going to.
I would be surprised if we heard. I would be surprised if we heard by the end of the year, to be honest.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, whatever happens, we will talk about it on our show. But this Bond, finishing up, I think it gets, if you went into it, if you read some of the, like, if you look at Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, it's not as bad as you think it, as they say it is. And there are some stellar moments. The action sequences are pretty good. Bond girl / Talia al Ghul / Elektra King is fantastic. Renard's a little underdeveloped, but it's just because he's not pushing the he's not a villain pushing. He's a terrorist and kidnapper that also happens to be in the vicinity. You know what I mean? And they kind of waste his cool thing.
He's underdeveloped in service to the
Elektra.
twist.
Yeah.
And I wish that they had. Excuse me. I wish that they had kind of gave him a little bit more development, so you kind of don't see it coming.
And yes, and also he's kind of underdeveloped in the same way Bane was underdeveloped in Dark Knight Rises. That is, you know what I mean? Like, he's just underdeveloped because he's just a tool to be used. He's very much a blunt force Bondian tool to be used by Elektra. So they're a good thing. And then Denise Richards is like, I know why she was cast. She looks really good in small shorts. And they had a scene in a submarine, and we knew we were going to get a wet T-shirt. So we're all super happy about that. But the character's underdeveloped, and like you said, she is just, whatever. I don't think it's the worst Brosnan Bond, because, at some point on our show we will talk about Die Another Day. But it is not GoldenEye, right? But it's a fun Bond, and again, it's got some cool things. Like Marceau chewing scenery is really nice, and she's not hard to look at. There's also 2 or 3 things with ice where I'm just like, we've never seen a Bond girl do that. That's just crazy. But we have one more Bond to get through in BOND-A-THON 2024. There they are, all our Bonds. And we've done everybody except that one in the middle with the very big gun pointing at us. And next week, we will do Daniel Craig in Skyfall, his 3rd outing as James Bond. Interesting thing here is Skyfall is one of those that you can have fights with people eagerly about whether Skyfall or Casino Royale is the best of the Craig Bonds. No one will ever fight you that Quantum of Solace is the worst of the Craig Bonds. But Skyfall...
Skyfall is damn close, but Casino Royale is such a banger.
Casino Royale is a banger. I think Skyfall is better, but only because Javier Bardem is just... we actually get in our lifetime, we get the concept that Bond could sleep with another man, and it's the absolute creepiest sequence in the entire franchise, and it's fantastic because Craig is game, and so is Bardem, and so I think Skyfall is one of my favorites. But we will where can people find you if they want to get in touch with your writing or get in touch with you and other podcasts, if they have longing for you and they can't wait for the next Monday night?
All of my writing can be found at filmbuffonline.com. We also have a Facebook page which alerts people who like and follow that page to when we have new content going up on the site. That includes reviews, news, some feature pieces. I can kind of tell you that, Bill Gadavascus, my partner in crime over there, has a new installment of his ongoing series We Found It on streaming being set up to go on Friday, And I
Nice.
think tomorrow he's going to have something.
He did a Civil War review that I don't agree with, but it's one of the very rare times that him and I have disagreed.
He has another feature commentary piece coming up. I think it's going to be ready for tomorrow about some of the things that Jerry Seinfeld has been saying recently. I have an animated TV review coming up for something that's debuting in a couple of days that I can't even tell you what it is until tomorrow at noon, I think. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Also on the
is it the
Facebook
new
page,
X-Men 97 episode? Because I got to tell you,
No.
Rich, that
No.
show.
Yeah.
Are you caught up yet?
I am not caught up yet. I've been
Son
too
of a
damn
bitch,
busy with
Rich.
a bunch of other. I know.
God damn it, Rich.
You're not the only person yelling at me about this, by the way.
Jesus Christ.
But also on the Facebook page, we have posts alerting to people when some entertainment greats pass away. Like today, we lost Zach Norman, the actor who was in Romancing the Stone, which we just talked about a little bit a couple of months ago. Shame to see him go, but he had a great life and left us some great performances to enjoy.
Boy, Romancing the Stone is 1984. That would be an interesting. Mm-hmm. That would be an interesting summer movie.
Yeah.
Generation movie.
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. I didn't talk about that here. I talked about somewhere else, which I'll plug in a moment.
That's fine, but I'm just saying that could be a huge.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a huge like red herring.
Oh yeah.
It could be a spoiler.
Also, I'm on 2 other podcasts. The first is the podcast I do through Film Buff Online with my co-host Natasha Bogutsky, called The Big Picture Podcast. You can find a link to all our episodes on Facebook, on FilmBuffOnline.com, or at BigPicturePod.com. The other podcast that I do is Film Scribes, and I do that as a member of the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle. We haven't done one in a couple of weeks, but you can find our entire back catalog of 100 and some episodes on your favorite podcatcher of choice. And finally, I can be followed on social medias, on Twitter and on Blue Sky at FilmBuffRich.
We got to get that Bogutsky girl back on. We miss her, and I know people have been asking about her. She's in a show, so
yeah,
she's busy. She's playing Lust in a show in Scranton. So we wish her the best. Break a leg.
It's wonderful. It's a wonderful show.
We want her back, and people want her back because she's a good foil for the two of us, 2 old podgy white guys fighting about movies. We never really fight. You and I never really fight. But I mean, sometimes we fight, but not a lot. It's not like Siskel and Ebert kind of thing. I mean, one's fat, one's thin, but we don't always fight. Anyway, you can find my stuff, JW the Movie Guy, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, all of those things. You can also find me on, on Tuesday nights. I do this little show called Loud Nerdy. Tomorrow night we will be sans Kyle. It'll just be me and Jerry Kimura. We're going to be talking about Twilight Zone episode called Third from the Sun. Jerry will have another thing of It Came from Jerry's Basement, which will be super cool. Ooh, he's picking great movies. Like, Logan's Run and Night of the Comet. And he picked Perce last week, which is a great Will Wheaton H.P. Lovecraft movie from the 80s. Also, a couple things network-wise. We are building different things happening on the network. So first things first, are you creative and have an indie movie trailer commercial? Email it to us. We'll play it on an upcoming Indie Escape Network show. Free. We won't charge anything. the.indie.escape@gmail.com. This is a big one. Indie Escape Network is in search of a producer co-host for a new Sunday night show, tentatively starting in June with Joe Ridgely, our very fun and cool producing partner / creative genius. Shoot us an email if interested. the.indie.escape@gmail.com. And like I said, you'll have help from a lot of different people. It won't just be Joe, but Joe's a great person to learn from and be able to build things. He's helped me a great deal with getting our shows streamlined with Loud Nerdy and with Generation Movie. I can't talked about them enough. Also coming up this Sunday, May 5th at 10 p.m., The Path to Carolina Fear Fest 2024. Matt Burns of Evil Genius, Michael McGunn, Bloody Summer Camp Slasher Nurse, Brian Bremer, Pumpkinhead Silent Night Deadly Night, hosted by our own Wendy Zier and Joe Ridgely. Should be a lot of fun, and it's the Path to Carolina Fear Fest, which is an upcoming festival, and it's something we like to get involved with the Indie Escape Network. So by all means, join us. And that's it. Next week, Skyfall. Also, I just want to say, in case we might have to move some things around, but I have something coming up, a little bit serious. I should be okay, but I just want to say, if anything happens or does happen, I love working with you, Rich, and I love the show, and I love what we've built. And
don't make me nervous about this, dude. I'm
knock
trying to be chill.
I know, knock on wood. But I just want to say that to everybody too. Like I enjoy reading your comments. I enjoy paying attention. I really do listen to everybody who watches our shows. I'll talk a little bit more about it tomorrow night on Loud and Nerdy because we have plenty of time because Kyle's not there to rail against the Twilight Zone. So, but have a great night. We'll talk to everybody. Stay safe. We'll see everybody next week for Skyfall. Nobody does it better than Generation Movie. Bye. Good night.